Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to not only my library tour for 2022, but another sexy backlit video. I'm down on the floor. I may never get up again. I may have my food and mail delivered here. But I'm down on the floor because we are at the bottom of this next bookcase. So I put a pile of pillows on the floor and then took a long time cantilevering myself down into this position. God knows if I can get back up from it. But I thought we'd just go through this last bookshelf, and then the choice will be, as long as I've got this pillow here, and as long as I'm accustomed to these tortures of the damned, do I stay down here and maybe do the next bookcase from the bottom up instead of the top down, even though that seems far more Protestant than Catholic? I don't know. I don't know how to commit that heresy. Probably the next video will be an occasion for the step stool, which is no less dangerous than sitting on the floor. Maybe I should be one of those pretentious bookstagrammers that has no books on the bottom or top shelf. They've just got accent plants and decorative rocks and whatnot. Oh, but I love books. I love literature. It sings in my veins. Yeah, right. Okay. So let's look at this bottom shelf here, which, believe it or not, I do frequent. I just don't tour it. It's easy to frequent it. I can bend down and grab one of these books if I need it. So the first one was from 2018. We saw this come in the mail. I talked about this. I loved it. I loved it when it was reissued as a paperback. I loved the series that arose from it. This is by Roberto Saviano, and it is a novel called The Piranhas, about the boy bosses of Naples. These teenage boys who suddenly find themselves in a position to take over the crime world from their clueless, technologically inept elder counterparts. Utterly fascinating. Just utterly fascinating. I loved it. I don't know quite why, but it's really well done. Okay, then we have yet another book on Venice. Several of you have been telling me that you could not live with your little book sanctum wherever it is. You should all have one. You should all have a book sanctum just like this one. Somehow. A tiny little room, a walk-in closet that you can convert, some space that you can fill to the rafters with books, no accent rocks, and that you can close the door on. That's really important, I think, no matter what. But several of you said that you could not live with your little book sanctum the way mine is because the books are everywhere. When it's not a big space. It's twice the size of the space that I would want, but it's not a big space. I could, without doing much reaching, arrange these books in order, in some kind of order. All the Boston books together, all the Venice books together, all the Martha's Vineyard books together, all the Cape Cod books together, all the dinosaur books together. I could do that, but I haven't yet done that. And I know the way, I'm sure you're all like this, you know where your books are, except for the one you're looking for. The one you're looking for you absolutely cannot find, but the others you know where they are, despite how haphazard the collection might look. And here's another example of that. This is another book on Venice, my second favorite city in the world. What are the details on this thing? This is by Gabriel Faure, translated and adapted by J.H. and J.M. Dennis. And it is part of a series, and this one came out in 1957. And it's just all high-quality black and white photos. There you have a tourist peering over the edge of one of Venice's innumerable picturesque bridges, and apparently a local. Perhaps my old landlady walking over the bridge as well. There you have a resting gondolier. These things are interesting to me anyway, because I lived in Venice. Didn't just visit. I wasn't just a tourist. I stayed there. But also because every one of them is a snapshot of the time period of Venice. All of those pictures are from places that are underwater now or have different owners, different renovations, tons and tons more tourists. So they're a snapshot, and I like that about them. But nevertheless, they should all be together. All of my Venice books should be together. We saw just a couple of days ago 2 other Venice books. They're next to each other, but they're nowhere near this one. Okay, well, I'll figure it out. Then we have this thing. I rescued this. It was in terrible shape. I saved it. It's now indestructible. This is by Kenneth Roberts, the great historical novelist that is now completely forgotten. If Rabble in Arms, if Northwest Passage are forgotten, then Kenneth Roberts is completely forgotten. But he wrote a nonfiction book called Trending into Maine that had N.C. Wyeth illustrations. And it's wonderful. Just a wonderful glimpse. Talk about a time period a time capsule. This is a glimpse of a Maine that doesn't really exist anymore. He and Wyeth go through the Paleolithic beginnings of civilization in Maine. I would say it doesn't really exist anymore, but no, the northern part of Maine is exactly the same now as it was 100 years ago when this book was written. When did this thing come out? Mark Richardson would probably know right off the top of his head. 1938, very nearly 100 years. Maine, for those of you who aren't familiar with your American states, is far to the north of Massachusetts. It has an endless coastline. It's just a gigantic coastline, some parts of the coastline are very nice. They are touristy. I'm thinking of places like Ogunquit, where you get a large tourist attraction because the seaside is lovely there. But the vast amount of the state is not in the south. The vast amount of the state is not on the shore. The vast amount of the state is very small towns, dirt road communities, great people, but as close to stereotypical New England frontier life as you can get. Yes, there's a Quickie Mart on every corner and everybody has Wi-Fi, but it's a very rural feeling in northern Maine. Trending into Maine is great. Anyway, the subject really brings out, Kenneth Roberts sometimes in his novels fights against his own fancier rhetorical impulses, I think. You'd want Mark's opinion on this for the definitive question on the subject, but I think he sometimes fights against that. I think he sometimes thinks that's not in the remit of a serious historical novelist. And in Trending into Maine and a couple of other things that he did, he doesn't fight against those. And it shows that he has a command of a lovely prose line. I don't know that it would have worked in his historical fiction, but I love it in books like Trending into Maine. This next one. All right, this next one is huge. And it has an interesting life story to it. This is the... I want to get the publisher right because it's so distinctive. Who does this? I ought to know off the top of my head. Gollancz. This is UK publication. This is a gigantic trade paperback of the complete chronicles of Conan from Gollancz. This huge thing with a stiff end paper map and then just everything inside it. And the life story of this volume is interesting. I was years ago watching a brand new booktube channel called Jason Harrigan by Jason Harrigan. I forget what the actual YouTube channel's name was because he's had 50 of them. I don't remember what the name of that original channel was, but I saw this book on his shelf and impetuously asked about it. And he impetuously sent it to me, which is no small thing. Any of you who've tried to send mail across the Atlantic Ocean from Ireland to what used to be called the next parish over, it's pretty expensive to do. And he did it anyway, out of the fullness of his heart, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. I put that hardcover on my shelf, and then one of you found this trade paperback at a library sale for like $2. The find of the century. You never see this thing. You never see this thing in bookstores, let alone used. You the person very kindly sent it to me, which allowed me to give the hardcover to Mark Richardson, who didn't have it and who coveted it just as much as I did. It was an easy decision to make because A, I knew that Jason wouldn't mind if it went to a great home. And homes for books don't get much better than the old house up in Vermont. And B, I knew that Mark would take better care of a hardcover than I would. So it worked out all around. So this book is still in my collection, but not the original one, not the one that I got from Ireland. This next one is another old book. This is probably, this is probably also 100 years old. 1909. This is older than 100 years. This is William Winter, Old Friends. I don't know if I can make that out. He did a book before this about his old days and ways in Boston and Cambridge. And this book is kind of a companion to that. I've never seen the other one at the Brattle Bookshop, which is obviously where I got this one. But I see this one, and this is all of the famous people that he met. Hawthorne and Longfellow and Charles Dickens and a lot of lesser figures as well. He gives them all loving pen portraits in here, but this is all literary. There's, I think, one or two essays in here that are about the literary life, but other than that, it's all literary profiles. So like Yesterday's with Authors by Jim Fields, this belongs in the literary bookcase in the other room. It doesn't really belong in here. But when did I get this? Years ago? In 2015 I got this. And it's the type of thing that only ever shows up at the Brattle Bookshop. The Brattle Bookshop is the only place you're going to be able to go on a random Tuesday and get this for $1. And it's great. It's great because Lots of people did this. Fields, we saw yesterday, or the last time we did this, he did this as well. Lots of people did these. These are my literary friends and acquaintances type things. William Dean Howells used to do that all the time. And the reason why they're so great, apart from the fact that if the author's a good writer, and Bill Winter is a good writer, if aside from that, there'll be all sorts of little biographical details and moments that larger biographies, full-dress, actual modern biographies of these literary characters leave out, or don't know about, or simply don't know about. It could easily be that an anecdote about, I don't even know. Let's pick an example. It'll almost certainly heartbreakingly be an example of someone who does not have a full-length biography. Yeah, Artemus Ward. James Russell Lowell has a little chapter in here. It could easily be that someone writing a full-dress biography of those figures doesn't know that Winter's book exists, so they never see that anecdote. That could easily happen. So that's another reason why they're fascinating. Okay, this next one is from the Center for Hellenic Studies, Harvard University. I got this in the mail. I wonder if I still have a... Yeah, I do. I still have a slip on this. I got this in January 2018. Fell right into it. Loved it. It's a scholarly work. It's an odd choice to be in this room. Most scholarly works don't make it in here. I don't know what that says about me, or maybe I do. But this is Old Norse mythology, comparative perspectives. Just a scholarly work about Norse mythology. I have quite a few books about Norse mythology in this room. Are they together? No. No, they are not. Okay, then we have Bernard Knox, the great classicist Bernard Knox. This is the oldest dead white European males. This is a collection of essays they did, including the title essay, about subjects classical and pedagogical. It's not a long book. I think I got this through the History Book Club back when they did it. Delightful in a Dawn-ish kind of way. I am a big fan of the author, so I'll take it. Okay, this next one has been battered all to heck and gone. It's waterlogged, which is kind of ironic. It's yellowed, which is kind of ironic. This is the Dune Encyclopedia. An indispensable and yet out of print companion to Frank Herbert's original Dune novels. This has entries on what the spice is, what worms are, what faster-than-light travel is, what hyperspace is, what the various guilds are. But woven in, it's much more than an encyclopedia, because woven in and around all of those entries are endless numbers of stories. Just endless numbers of stories about the thousands of years of the Imperium before the events in the novel Dune. And during and after those events, but especially before. We learn so many stories. The 3 columns, the pages are double columned. And the 3 columns that we get on the Holtzman drive, the faster-than-light drive that makes star travel possible in the Dune universe, the 3 columns of prose that we get on that are a whole novel on their own. Now, that novel has probably been written ineptly by Herbert's son and his collaborator, Kevin Anderson, but I mean a real novel, a Frank Herbert novel. You get that all throughout this book. You get whole novels trash compacted into 1 column of a dispassionate encyclopedia prose. Just amazing stuff. I get lost in this book every bit as easily as I do in any of the actual novels that it underpins. Okay, then we have a couple of books that are actually together. I'm not sure they belong here. I have an American history bookcase. I have a biography bookcase. Neither one of them is this one. But this is by James Giglio, and this is the Presidency of John Kennedy. A revised edition, scholarly assessment of Kennedy, of his administration. Absolutely no hero worship, absolutely no glory that was Camelot, absolutely none of that. Instead, this is just an assessment of what he did, what his policies were, what they cost, what kind of opposition he met in Congress and how he dealt with it, what his allies were like at the state and local level. Just indispensable. I know I'm using that word, but an indispensable guide to Kennedy. If you want to read past the hero for our time or an unfinished life or all of that lachrymose stuff, that's one of the books to get. And this is the other one, The Kennedy Presidency. This is by Deborah Strober and Gerald Strober. It's an oral history of the Kennedy presidency, but again, it goes well past the fallen prince, the Hamlet type ideology. Really does a great job. A fantastic mine of original sources that are often overlooked or misused or quoted out of context. So those are 2 books next to each other on President Kennedy, and they really ought not to be here. I very much like them, but they ought not to be here. I have a shelf of Kennedy books. What they're doing in here when those aren't, I don't know. I will fix it, but I won't fix it now. I'm going to fix all of this when I'm done with the little book room. When we have finally made it in late summer, all the way to the end of this room, then I will pause this library tour for a week, and take care of this room. Pull everything out that's a double, pull everything out that doesn't belong here, rearrange things so that I don't have to hunt for them. But that's later. That's a long time from now. Okay, then we have an anthology. This is the Best of Rumpole, chosen by John Mortimer, the creator of Rumpole, the Old Bailey hack who lives on the rich pickings of the legal aid system and fights in court against the likes of Justice Ollie Oliphant, and who never pleads guilty. These are great stories. The Rumpole world is a great comic world, whether you're looking at the short stories or the surprisingly effective novels that we saw earlier in this library tour. And this Best of collection came out a while ago. This came out decades ago and was updated. There was a later anthology. This thing came out in 1993 when Rumpole was going strong. John Mortimer was still writing this character. So you've got some great stories in here. Probably, if I remember correctly, a couple of my all-time favorites. Rumpole on the Tap End, Rumpole a la carte, Rumpole on Trial, and Rumpole and the Bubble Reputation are four great stories. And this volume is actually dedicated to Leo McKern, the actor who immortalized the character. Then we have, oh golly, see, this is another example. This is Henry Beadle Huff. This is Singing in the Morning, Essays about Martha's Vineyard. A great volume of his about the island of Martha's Vineyard. Again, a snapshot, just like the Venice books. The Martha's Vineyard that he's describing here has largely changed. But this, Henry Beadle Huff was the legendary owner and editor of the Martha's Vineyard Gazette in its heyday, for which I write book reviews right now in 2022, the unguessable year of 2022, a year that none of us thought we would ever live to see. And 2022 was typically the year stamped at the beginning of the science fiction novels that we read. And here we are living in it. This is wonderful. I was very happy to find this. I found this at the Brattle just a few years ago. But it belongs with all the other Martha's Vineyard books. It doesn't belong here. What we just saw, just a couple of days ago, we saw this book, To the New Owners. Also a Martha's Vineyard book. And there are plenty of others that we've seen. They belong together. And then we'll finish out this shelf. But not the rest of my life. I'm going to live my life down here. I am now Floor Steve, not Couch Steve. But this is the later anthology of Rumpole. So again, you can see, like with Martha's Vineyard, like with Venice, like with Old Boston Memoirs, like with science fiction or John F. Kennedy or anything else, really. This is now a Rumpole collection. It wasn't even next to the Best of Rumpole, let alone with all the other Rumpole books that we saw. They should all be together. This is Forever Rumpole. One of these two, either the Best of Rumpole or Forever Rumpole, I actually reviewed for a large expat English audience for a newspaper. I was very happy to get a chance to write about Rumpole. It was one of the this will have lots of the stuff that's in the Best of Rumpole. Yeah, it has all of that and then a lot more, like a half a dozen more stories and a new introduction. And one of the great unlooked for benefits of, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I was a book reviewer, a book critic, a book columnist for a long time ago. And then I stopped. I stopped on a dime. I got out of that world and went into retail book selling for a quarter of a century. Why I didn't do both at the same time, I do not know. I cannot answer that question. But eventually I decided to get back into the world of book reviewing and book commentary, and now I do all of that. And one of the little worries that I had when I was out of it was, boy, if I ever did get back into this world, I won't get a chance to write about any of these people that I really want to write about, because I won't find a publication, I won't find an audience. I did find publications, I did find an audience, and I got a chance to review a Rumpole book. I think it was this one. If I remember, I will look for the link down below. But of course, in this as in all cases, just Google. Google is your best friend for finding out what Steve has written about and when. Just Google my name and the name of the book or the author or the main character or whatever, and you'll get a lot. Can't vouch for whether or not it'll be paywalled. Can't vouch for whether or not it'll be well formatted, but that usually does the trick. Every once in a while, I need to use, one of you needs to help me use, what is it called? The Go Back Machine? The Wayback Machine? There's a service on YouTube or on Google online that will find, they archive everything that's on Google somehow, and they can find those things. A little bit of an extra step involved, but worth it if you're looking for that one piece that you can't find anywhere else. But I will try to remember to leave a link. I think I wrote a review of the Piranhas as well. But I know it made my year-end list for best fiction for that year. And I wrote a review, I'm pretty sure, of Forever Rumpole, so that would be 2 links to find for this thing. I've lapsed in including written links down below, even though all of you have said how much you enjoy those. So I will try to get back to that. But that's it. I'm only stalling because everything below my 4th vertebra is numb. But I now need to commence the long, protracted process of getting circulation back so that I can stand up again and make myself some rice. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.